Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Young. I'm often asked many times through my career to really discuss socialism and just kind of in a nutshell why at times if we go to a pro-socialism agenda, why it's deemed to fail. I want to kind of air the laundry here to kind of have a presentation to discuss socialism. Not that I'm against socialism, but to lay it out in terms of how it has to fit in the overall scheme of things when a country is trying to manage its economy and support social programs. This presentation in general will just be very quickly in terms of, it's my view. It doesn't necessarily, it's the only view, but it's going to give you a different perspective of how socialism comes into play. Here's a little bit about myself. I'm a CPA CGA by trade. I basically come from academia, industry, as well as financial solutions. So I have the whole gamut in terms of what it needs to compete. How important is the role of government in terms of policy development? And that's what you're going to get from this type of video. So I'm going to talk about what is socialism. I'll talk about social programs. I'll talk about income distribution. I'll talk about the private sector, and I'll talk about issues in general. So what is socialism? If we go back through history, in a lot of cases in the old days we used to have communism where government had control over industry and basically dictated how things were going to be done. So they basically took care of you. The whole idea of socialism is the government's going to take care of you from cradle to grave. That in theory is a nice idea, but reality it's not. No matter how you dice and slice it when you start talking about socialism, you have to have a balance of policies. So most of the cases when you get into different governments, it's more about playing to an electorate than dealing with the issues at hand in terms of redistribution of wealth and how you maintain the social fabric of society. So in general, in order to fund social programs, you need revenue. And the government gets revenue through direct taxation, indirect taxation, income from crown corporation, user fees, or other taxations, where the bulk of direct taxation is coming from corporate and personal taxes. Let's stop there. Personal income tax and corporate taxes are driven majority from an economy. The economy supports the tax dollars flowing into a government. In socialism, they would create these own corporations and tell how these corporations operate. In a lot of cases in the old days, they weren't efficient or effective how they were doing the markets because set prices were set. We don't want to go to that era. You want to be able to have business that make decisions that can generate profit, and that profit actually has two benefits. One is it generates the tax dollars, and the other thing, it generates returns both to shareholders and to pension funds. Pension funds are critical. That's where you see CPP as well as any sort of mutual funds that you're involved with on company pensions. What are social programs? In general, they're like education, healthcare, retirement, old age security, CPP, childcare, welfare programs. They're set up as a fabric to support people. It's basically taking a bucket of tax dollars and redistributing it to groups. And that's really what it's about, but it's tax dollars. When you look at tax dollars, you're talking about certain aspects of that tax dollars and how it's collected. As I said earlier, with a capital market, you have to have that business investment come in to basically take that tax dollars to redistribute it. And honestly, Canada in general does a very good job of redistribution of the wealth in terms of taking it from different groups and giving it down to the less fortunate. How are social programs funded? Equalization is a means to where provinces who don't have the same revenue capacity get a share of this wealth from different income like royalties into a fund, and they get that money. Canadian social transfer and the health social transfer are monies to take money to healthcare funding as well as to post-secondary school education as well as daycare. It's a way of taking that tax dollars that comes in the bucket at a federal level and redistributing it. Direct funding, the provinces themselves fund those programs directly. Again, it's with taxpayers' dollars. Why is business investment important? Because it drives an economy. If you look at Canada's case, we're a population of 35 million people. For business to prosper and survive, it has to drive on two aspects. One, the domestic market, that's the consumer marketplace here, and then the export market. It has to be able to leverage its capital to make that return on business, to provide that return to shareholders, and the same token to provide that corporate tax and personal taxation back to government as part of basically driving the economy. The thing that people don't understand with socialism, you take that means away from government and from business to operate, then you take that means their desire to achieve results. And that's not a good thing to do in terms of business. Okay. Business also requires what we call as input, and that's labor and materials. Because of that causes things to be spent in an economy. And that's where consumer spending comes into play. 2/3 of an economy is driven by consumer spending. Issues with socialism. If you try to tell everybody you're going to pay them the same wage, there's no incentive for these people to move ahead. So productivity suffers. If a company feels this government's going to be too much intervention with them, and we saw this happen to Cuba back in the 50s, where the government walked in and nationalized things, they're going to lose their investment. So if companies feel that the government isn't a good government to work with, or they're going to have too much control, they're going to go elsewhere and make their investments. Less investment means less opportunity for job creation. Socialism never talks about value for money. Value for money is critical so that you drive that taxpayer dollar down to make sure you get an efficient use of it. The other thing that socialism doesn't deal with is government doesn't work in a competitive environment. You're not bidding openly for police services, fire services, military services. So when you start talking about program spending, direct program spending, you're seeing that aspect show up as part of the overall socialism. Now, I'm not against socialism. I believe you have to have a balanced approach to policy. What I'm concerned about is we're raising a generation and different people that want a handout. Government's role is to provide the climate, encourage business investment, collect that taxpayers' dollars, and redistribute it in the most efficient, effective manner. Government's role is not to continue to play to electorates to try to secure votes. What it should be doing is working in the best interest of Canadians to maximize the tax dollars for the end results, to redistribute that income to the less fortunate, as well as to provide the social programs like education and health care. That's the thing that's being lost in all this discussion with mainstream media. It's something that needs to be come back to, is we need a balanced approach to policy. We can't be all one way. We can't all be the other way. We can't be pro-capitalism. We can't be pro-socialism. So we need a balance. This presentation is kind of take you to a balanced approach to socialism. Thank you.